Jai Mr. Pad, Paramahansa, Parikacharya, Ashtar.
Divine Grace, Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada ki Jai. ISKCON BPT Founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada ki Jai. Jai Mr. Pad, Paramahansa, Parikacharya, Ashtar, Shishima. The Divine Grace, Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur ki Jai. Ananda Bhakti Vaishnava ki Jai. Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur ki Jai. Prantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki Jai. Samaveta Bhaktivinoda ki Jai. All glory to the assembled devotees. All glory to the assembled devotees. All glory to the assembled devotees. All glory to Shri Guru and Guranga.
Narayanam Namaskritya Narang Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayamudiriet. Before reciting the Srimad Bhagavatam, which is a very means of conquest, we should offer our respectful obeisances unto Lord Narayan, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, unto Narayan Rishi, the supermost human being, unto Mother Saraswati, the goddess of learning, unto Srila Vyasadeva, the author, and unto Srila Prabhupada, the translator, commentator, and our spiritual master. Nashta Prayesha Bhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavatyuttama Shloke and Bhakti Bhavati Naishtki. By regular attendance and classes on Srimad Bhagavatam and by rendering devotional service to the pure devotee, all that is inauspicious within the heart is destroyed almost to nil, and loving devotion to the Supreme Lord, who is glorified in best of songs, is established as an irrevocable fact. And this is a little bit too loud for me. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. On this 18th day of October 2017 in SanDiego, we're reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, translation and commentary by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. We are in Canto 3, the status quo, Chapter 26, Fundamental Principles of Material Nature, text number 39. Okay. Dravya kutitvam gunata. Dravya kutitvam gunata. Vyakti sangstatvam evacha. Vyakti sangstatvam evacha. Tejastvam tejasaksadvi. Tejastvam tejasaksadvi. Rupamatrasya vrittayaha. Rupamatrasya vrittayaha. Dravyakutitvam gunatha. Vyakti sangstatvam evacha. Tejastvam tejasaksadvi. Rupamatrasya vrittayaha. Please chant. Dravyakrititvam gunatha. Vyakti sangstatvam evacha. Tejastvam tejasaksadvi. Rupamatrasya vrittayaha. Dravyakrititvam gunatha. Vyakti sangstatvam evacha. Tejastvam tejasaksadvi. Rupamatrasya vrittayaha. You're up. Dravyakrititvam gunatha. Vyakti sangstatvam evacha. Tejastram tejasaksādvi rupamatrasya vrittayaha. Ryan, you want to try? Dravyakrtitvam gunatha Bhakti sangstatvam evacha Tejastram tejasaksādvi Rupamatrasya vrittayaha. Dravya, of an object. Akrtitvam, dimension. Gunata, quality. Bhakti sangstatvam, individuality. Eva, also. Cha, and. Tejastvam, effulgence. Tejasaha, of fire. Sadvi, O virtuous lady. Rupamatrasya, of the subtle element form. Vrittayaha, the characteristics. Translation, please repeat. My dear mother, the characteristics of form are understood by dimension, quality, and individuality. The form of fire is appreciated by its effulgence. Okay, I'll read it one more time myself. My dear mother, the characteristics of form are understood by dimension, quality, and individuality. The form of fire is appreciated by its effulgence. Purport. Every form that we appreciate has its particular dimensions and characteristics. The quality of a particular object is appreciated by its utility. But the form of sound is independent. Forms which are invisible can be understood only by touch. That is the independent appreciation of invisible form. Visible forms are understood by analytical study of their constitution. The constitution of a certain object is appreciated by its internal action. For example, the form of salt is appreciated by the interaction of salty tastes, and the form of sugar is appreciated by the interaction of sweet tastes. Tastes and qualitative constitution are the basic principles of understanding the form of an object. I'm going to read a couple more. Dyotanam pachanam panam adanam himamardanam tejaso vittayasvetha soshanam chuttadevacha. Fire is appreciated by its light and by its ability to cook, to digest, to destroy cold, to evaporate, and to give rise to hunger, thirst, eating, and drinking. Purport. The first symptoms of fire are distribution of light and heat, and the existence of fire is also perceived in the stomach. Without fire, we cannot digest what we eat. Without digestion, there's no hunger and thirst or power to eat and drink. When there is insufficient hunger and thirst, it is understood that there is a shortage of fire within the stomach, and the Ayurvedic treatment is performed in connection with the fire element, Agnimandyam. Since fire is increased by the secretion of bile, the treatment is to increase bile secretion. The Ayurvedic treatment thus corroborates the statements in Srimad Bhagavatam. The characteristic of fire in subduing the influence of cold is known to everyone. Severe cold can always be counteracted by fire. Okay, one more. Text 41. Rupamatrad vikurvanat tejaso daivachoditat rasamatramabhutasmad ambho jihva rasagraha. By the interaction of fire and the visual sensation, the subtle element taste evolves under a superior arrangement. From taste, water is produced, and the tongue, which perceives taste, is also manifested. Purport. The tongue is described here as the instrument for acquiring knowledge of taste. Because taste is a product of water, there is always saliva on the tongue. Om jnana timirandasya jnananjana shalakaya chakshu unmilatam mena tasmai shri gurave namaha. I was born in the darkness of ignorance. My spiritual master Srila Prabhupada opened my eyes with the torchlight of knowledge. I offer my humble obeisances unto him and all members of Sri Parampara. So one may rightly ask, do we really need to know all this stuff? We're a long way from Goloka Vrindavan here, or in Krishna's Leela. But actually, the great devotees, they take great relish in every verse, every word of Srimad Bhagavatam, which ultimately glorifies Krishna, glorifies the Supreme Personality of Godhead, which is what we're all about. So what we're hearing here is a fairly technical explanation of how the creation takes place. And it's describing the gradual development of all of the elements, the senses that perceive the elements and how they work and how our daily life and moment-to-moment life is really produced. Prabhu would often make the point that modern religion, with its rudimentary or absent, description of creation, is not satisfied to the modern scientific mind, and therefore, many scientific-minded people, they think that they're being realistic, and they just reject religion because it can't really describe all these wonderful, detailed descriptions of the Big Bang and the universe and the solar system and all the things that they try to give us. But here we see that this is really where we live. I mean, our daily activity is and our daily life is composed of all of these different sensations, and how we make sense of them and how we interact with them and so forth. So really, this is fascinating information for one who's really looking for the story, or the account rather, of creation. And this is one of the things that is included in that famous phrase, Tato Brahma Jigyasa. The Tato Brahma Jigyasa is the first sutra of the Vedanta Sutra, and it really kind of separates human beings from animals. Animals, they don't ask these kind of questions. Where does everything come from? What is the absolute truth? Is there an absolute truth? They don't have that facility. They're simply situated on the sensual plane. Very rudimentary consciousness. The lower you go, the more rudimentary it is. And although higher animals such as dogs, cats, bears, all of these things, they experience the forms and they experience the taste and the smells just like we do. They have no capacity to understand or inquire, what does it mean? Where did it all come from? And what is the source of all of this? So, as you may already know, that really our process goes through 3 stages. This Sambandha Abhideya Prayojan is a very nice way of thinking about the progressive stage of devotional service. So Sambandha simply means a relationship. And as soon as we talk of relationship, we ask, well, between what and what? So the relationship we're asking about is our real self in relationship to this world and relationship to God, the Supreme, if there is a God, you see. So inquiring into the whole arguments for God and the existence of God and hearing about that, that's all part of Sambandha. In fact, if you look at the Chaitanya Charitamrita, I think it's chapter 20, where Lord Chaitanya begins his instructions to Sanatana Goswami. So there's a verse there where it describes in kind of a sutra form what is this Sambandha Abhideya Prayojana. Sambandha is Krishna, and the Abhideya is Krishna Bhakti, and the Prayojana is Prema, Krishna Prema. So how is Sambandha just Krishna? Because it all begins with Krishna. Ahameva sameva agre nanya jat sarasaparam. He says to Brahma in the first of the Chaturshloki Bhagavatam, in the second canto, 9th chapter. He says, before there was anything, I existed. Before there was the sadasat, that means the cause and effect and all the manifestation. I existed in the spiritual world. And all the energies were within me, the creative energies. So the internal energies are always manifest, the spiritual world, that's kind of synonymous with Krishna. But the external energies, what we call the material energy, that's within him. It exists, but it's not manifest. And then when everything is manifest, still I only exist, because it's my energy. And then whatever there is my internal and external energy and my swarup and so forth. And then when everything's wound up again, I'll continue to exist. That's the gist of that verse. which basically is saying, I am that Brahman who you're seeking. When you say Atato Brahma Jigasa, I am that, the ultimate, as Prabhu would call the absolute truth, the Para Brahman, the supreme absolute truth. So, how that one absolute truth, the one, becomes many, how he expands into all of us and our experiences, that's being described throughout the Bhagavatam, and here in perhaps the greatest detail in these chapters of Kapila Dev. So, notice that one of the things that's interesting here is that first comes the desire to taste something, and then comes the water and the tongue and the object of the taste. So that desire, or desire to see, for the form and the eyes and so forth, that's inherent within the soul because we're part and parcel of Krishna. And he's always seeing and touching and tasting. You read about the activities in the spiritual world or in Boma Vrindavan. There's all kinds of, exactly these fragrances and the tastes and the going on, forms. All of this is happening on the spiritual plane. So that's our original place. We originally have our spiritual body with spiritual mind, spiritual senses, eyes, the touch, everything, spiritual fragrances. And now we have this kind of reflection, or like when you think about the body, it's an incredible contraption. It's an incredible machine which is designed to allow the soul to interact with material nature and forget the spiritual nature. To have relative, seeing and tasting and tusting and loving and all of these different things. That's only possible with a body, with senses. And so Krishna arranges for us to have this complicated contraption called a material body, whose meaning, Prabhupada says, means senses. In other words, the whole body, the purpose is to give you these senses and the mind and everything to interact with material energy under the impression that that's all there is. But how this takes place, now, you remember the key factor in all this is the ego, the false ego, right? The false ego in contact with the mode of ignorance is producing all of these sensations and the senses and the objects of the senses. So, now, and it's always the false ego, because we have a false sense of self, which is separate from Krishna. We need to have a body and a world and a world of sensations that's separate from the spiritual world. And this is how it's taking place. It's fascinating how one leads to the other and to the other until you finally have this whole array of full senses and full sense objects, and there you have the material body. So, I've often thought of how the other processes of self-realization that are given, like Krishna describes in the 6th chapter, in a fair amount of detail, summary form, the process of meditation. The goal is the same. The goal is always to liberate ourselves from entanglement with the material world, focus our attention and our activities and everything on Krishna, and break out of this prison house of material energy. And he describes it there in quite detail. It all involves, the key element is the mind. Because the mind, contaminated mind, serves the false ego by giving it so many ways in which it can interact with this world and try to enjoy, avoid danger, and do all these different things, all in the process of forgetting Krishna. Forgetting our relation with Krishna. So, the mind, now when we're sitting here in Bhagavatam class, we're chanting our rounds, we're seeing the deities, the mind, through the senses, is being exposed to the transcendence. So there's a different focus. There's a whole different energy acting on us, and pulling our attention, our interest, and our affection, our attraction, hopefully. And part of that, a very important part of that process is hearing Bhagavatam. Because by hearing the Bhagavatam, the intelligence can be purified. The key difference we have from the animals is really the higher intelligence. So when we hear all of these things, and this is true obviously for every living being. There's nothing here that's not pertinent to someone born in the middle of Africa or the Middle East or China or anything. Every living being, and of course the human beings can understand it. This is actually where we all live. We all live in our bodies, and we all interact with the world with our senses. And understanding how that's come to be should be a revelation for everybody. We should really be interested in it. So one of the things that bhakti is so special compared to other forms of self-realization. And that is that it begins with the false ego. Meaning that the very first thing you do when you get in a temple, you bow down. In other words, we're working with the ego as the primary substance. How to change our sense of self, how to change our sense of what's important, how to change our whole activities based on who we understand ourselves to be. Whereas these other processes don't do that. And that's why you find yogis who become very proud and very egotistical. You find other yogis who become really enamored with the siddhis. You find the speculators, who are still after their own mukti. We were reading in Tucson. I had a few days of classes, so I decided to go through the teachings of Prahlad, his teachings to his father. He attempted to teach his father, but wonderful, teachings he gave to us by speaking to his father, as well as, of course, the prayers to Lord Nrsingadev. And at the end near the end of those prayers are those two famous verses. Perhaps the best known is Prayena Deva Munayo Svavamukti Kama Maunam Chadandi Vijanena Pararta Nishta. And what he's saying is there that for the most part, these wise souls who understand this kind of thing and understand we're not the body, but they're not real bhaktas, they want their own mukti. Svavamukti Kama, it's a kind of lust. There's nothing spiritual about it. The basic principle is to be free of the miseries of this world. Well, everybody wants that, But now we're going to make a complete solution by giving up the material body entirely and merging into that wonderful Brahmananda, where there's no more senses, no more In other words, the big mistake, the basic throwing out the baby with the bathwater, is that there, as Prabhupada explains in the purport to Bhagavad Gita 4.10, which is very illuminating, Vitaraga Bhaya Krodham Mayamam Upashita, that giving up attachment, fear, and anger. So the impersonalists who just want liberation, their motivation is fear. They fear another body because all they know is body equals suffering, right? If I have senses, then I gotta suffer. And that's certainly true of a material body. They're wise to that, but they don't understand that there's a spiritual body, spiritual senses, that doesn't produce suffering, but just produces bliss because it's engaged in the service of Krishna. So being envious of Krishna, they try to negate the whole idea of having a body and having activities and so forth. And therefore they eventually fall down. Aruha kuchena param padang tata patantyadho anadudi yushmanagri. The demigods praying to Krishna in the womb. And so that's their problem. You see, they haven't really reformed or purified the ego. The ego is still there. I want karma, I want mukti for myself. And the heck with everyone else. And so Prahlad says, Maunam chadanti. These munis, they practice silence. Maunam chadanti vijane naparata nishta. Vijane means where there's no people. They wander where there's no people. The hills of the Himalayas, caves, wherever. Naparata nishta, having no determination to help anyone else. You see? So that's not pleasing to Krishna, And so what do they get? Right, some very few may rise up for some time to some transcendental position, to great austerities. But can you imagine what it does to the heart to do all those austerities? Rather than having, beautiful deities and the chanting and the prasadam and the dissociation and the festivals and everything we have, which is, think about it, it's full of sense activity, purifying the senses. They don't have none of that because they have no faith. And so how do they propose to get liberated? By sheer force of will, holding back that mind and the senses. And what is the mind like? What does he compare it to? Who remembers? Arjun? Raging wind. Vayu iva suduskaram. It's hard to control the wind. Just think of all these hurricanes we've had. Or the fire is burning. The wind is a big part of it. Powerful wind, this fire and water just destroys so many things. So that's eventually, as Sanat Kumara mentions to Maharaj Prithu in the 4th canto. Prabhupada loved this verse. I heard him chant once the first line several times, really relishing. Yat pada pankaja palasha bilasa bhaktya yat pada pangaja vilasa, which means that the bhaktas, by serving the toes of the lotus feet of the Lord and experiencing vilas, the spiritual pleasure, tadvan karmashayam kvatitam udgatayanti santa. They untie or cut the knots, kvatitam udgatayanti, of karmashaya, which means aspiration for material sense gratification. In other words, it becomes insignificant. They're getting the higher taste from serving the lotus feet of Krishna. They may be very simple, they may be kings like Ambarish or, some sweeper in the street. Doesn't matter. That's not the qualification. The qualification is the sincerity of heart and determination to serve Krishna. But others, the second half of the verse, Tadvanna rikta matayo yatayo viruddhas rodoganasthamadadam bhajavasadevim. Others whose minds are empty of bhakti, rikta matayo, the impersonalists, the jnanis, and the siddha yogis and all these, who have no inclination to bhakti, no faith, they are eventually overcome by the waves of material desire in the heart. And therefore, the last phrase says, Bhaja Vasudevam. Therefore, you should worship Vasudeva. It's a very nice verse. So that's the great benediction. This is why we're sitting here. I mean, this is why I'm sitting here trying to be a devotee. I have no, I tried it a little bit, the meditation field, but it's impossible. What happens when you come out of meditation? Unless you're meditating for 12 hours a day, nobody does that. Maybe an hour. I got up to 15 minutes, where my knees became too distracting. But it's ridiculous, But we're actually trying to come to the point of being absorbed in Krishna all day, right? By serving Him, dynamic meditation. It makes perfect sense. All underlain by this chanting of the holy name, which anyone can do, Now, becoming absorbed and controlling the mind, that's another thing. But at least we have a chance. And the meditation is so powerful that even the neophytes, even just, a little bit of advancement on this path, and you really can feel so many obsessions, so many troubles just going away, just like the fog dissipating in the morning sun. Now, getting love of God is not so easy. You have to chant purely and give up all offenses. But still, the benefits are so great in bhakti that has anyone ever come out of the Hare Krishna movement and said, all right, that's it, I'm going to be in a Mayavadi? I've had it. Nobody says that. You may fall down into illusion and do so many nonsense things. But once you taste bhakti and you remember it, even if you can't keep up the process, the whole attraction, quote, attraction of impersonal realization, becomes ridiculous. It becomes a not something you really have to deal with. Now, but it's important to remember that generically, the idea of becoming comfortable in this world and getting free from trouble, that's really the same species of mukti. Mukti simply means getting rid of all the trouble, birth, death, old age, and disease. So Prabhu always talked about unflinching devotional service. Because in devotional service, there are always challenges coming up, sometimes life and death challenges. And the pure devotees are ready to take on those life and death challenges, risk their lives for Krishna. Prabhupada showed it, all the Pandavas, all the great devotees did that. Bhakti Siddhanta, continuing the parakram, even when there's threat against his life. Prabhupada did the same thing. The Naxalites in Calcutta in the early days, he's holding a pandal, and they're saying, no, you can't. If you do, we're going to, assassinate. And Prabhupada just went to the pandal. They showed up, Prabhupada gave them some seeds, and they were pacified. It's like Krishna in the heart, Amazing. But he's willing to face it. And also the other instance that I know of, there's probably many. You don't know what it was like. You remember what it was like with the Black Panthers. I mean, these guys, they heard pictures with guns. Eventually, anyway, they were crushed. But at a certain point in the 60s and early 70s, they had some power. This was like this black power. We're not going to kowtow anymore. And so when I think it was 1970, the third or fourth Rath Yatra in SanDiego, San Francisco, and so there was a big Rath Yatra. They built 3 big carts and everything. But the Black Panthers had claimed that part of the park or the whole park as their property. You know, this is our turf. You know, the whole gang mentality. You know, and you can't come there. So they told Prabhupada, he said, "This is a serious threat." Prabhupada says he wasn't interested in the threat. You know, he said, "We're going." You know, so the strategy was, you know what happened? It's an amazing story. So we had our own tough guys, Keshava, all right, and Karandar, and some of the guys, you know, and big Brahmananda. And you know, they have these sticks to keep people away from the wheels, because some of the Indians like to dive under the wheels, you know, go back to guided. So we knew about that, so we had some of these long sticks. Anyway, so they showed up. Now, but what to do? So Gargamuni is driving Prabhupada, but he took a long route, so he wouldn't get there at the start of the parade. And so there was a bit of a rumble at the beginning. But we had our Hell's Angels. They liked us by that time. They were our neighbors next to the Frederick Street Temple. And so at first it was like, you know, they're making too much noise. We're keeping them up in the morning, you know, they're trying to sleep. But after a while, enough prasadam, you know, they became our friends, which is very important. So they were our security. Keshava, whoever was organizing, he said, "Okay, would you like to be our security?" "Sure." I don't know. I don't think they gave him any money. They probably gave him some prasadam. So then there was this big rumble between the black power guys and the Hell's Angels at the beginning, and we had our guys, you know, fending with the sticks and everything, you know. So it had quieted down. They were defeated, and we had our parade was going on, and Prabhupada came in the middle of the parade. So finally they came, and the whole parade stopped, and they let Prabhupada out. And I was then, I think before he got on the cart, he was doing this dancing. Have you seen the pictures of Prabhupada dancing? This Hayagriva in the background, you know. It's one of the most ecstatic pictures. And then he got on the Subhadra's cart and continued. But the point was, he was ready to go. You can't scare him. So that, you know, that's, remember what I said, that the Mayavadis, their whole thing is fear. They're afraid of birth, death, old age, and disease, you know. And so but ultimately, you know, the devotees aren't afraid of anything. They feel completely protected. Prahlad is a perfect example, Prabhupada, so many others. So now we're bringing it back to the development of the senses and everything. So understanding how this takes place by the interaction of the false ego. So we should understand that this is actually the bars on our prison that are being constructed here. You know, all of the senses, the sense objects, the material interactions, and all of that. That's been going on forever. You know, I mean, it doesn't happen each time we get reborn, but this is these creations are happening many times, and as long as we're not pure, we have to come back. So the idea, this is fascinating information, it's intellectually satisfying, and we should want to use these senses that have been given to us. The old famous best use of a bad bargain. So now we're sitting here in these bodies, and we have all this stuff that's been created, fine. Or how do we act in such a way that we don't have to go through this creation again? That we can remain in our spiritual body with spiritual sensations and perceiving Krishna eternally, without all of these things. And you can see how it's a very complicated affair. And as you get older, you know, or even before you get older, you get an injury or whatever, some disease, it doesn't work properly. This thing which we kind of take for granted, the body, you know, especially when you're young, you know, yeah, I can do that, I can, you know, so many things. This doesn't work. You know, various things fail. Maybe one thing fails, you know. Like your sense of smell can go, I think, when you get older. This is one of the things that happens, especially if you have a brain tumor or some dementia or something, you know. And that can be a dangerous thing. You don't smell the gas, you know, you can imagine. But as soon as something happens that reduces how this whole machine works, then we lament, oh, you know, and you become envious. Oh, look, all those people, they're just walking so nicely. I can't walk anymore, you know, like whatever. There's so many things fail. So this is the whole lesson. What's the meaning of it? Not that we're going to spend trillions of dollars on a new medical, you know, the expanding medical thing. It's like the medicine and the so-called defense budget takes up half the gross national product. You know that this war in Iraq, this horrible war that was obviously wrong from the beginning in 2003. And they sold it. Oh, yes, it will be paid for by the oil. It's cost America $3.5 trillion. For nothing. No benefit at all. In fact, a whole lot of negative, so many Americans killed and wounded, and the PTSD, what to speak of the suffering in the Middle East. What a horrible, waste of resources. Can you imagine the whole world? You can have a temple in practically every town and village for that. So we have our own little resources. Every one of us is a little country, a little planet. What are we going to invest in? The karmis they invest in, I made up a little mantra. It's going out. So we chant Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. And the materialists, especially the big demons, they have a mantra. More money, more money. Money, money, more. More sex, more sex. This is it. This is kind of their mantra. In other words, they think about it all the time. They try to get more and more, and they're ready to. So we have, as I like to bring up often, is that we have a twofold mission. We have to accept that. We're serious devotees. We want to become advanced in devotional service. Yes, we want to go back to Godhead. This is part of our motivation in this state. We don't want to suffer anymore. We understand now that this is the cause of it, is our turning away from Krishna, rebelliousness. And so we want to reform ourselves and do the right thing, or avoid the wrong things, and go back to Godhead. Fine. But as we progress in this process, we should also be feeling the urgency of giving this to others. That's the twofold track that really is assured of our advancement. They don't work independently. By preaching a little bit, you get the mercy of Lord Nityananda, you get the mercy of Chaitanya, you can understand Radha Krishna. Without that, you can't. This is the way it's set up. So that's modeled by Lord Chaitanya himself, the internal and the external motivation for coming. We should have our internal and our external motivations, our manifestations, if you will. And that's why ISKCON is set up that way. Morning program is basically all internal. This is all, worship and the 5 processes that Rupa Goswami says are the most important of the 64. Living amongst devotees, living in a holy place, hearing Srimad Bhagavatam, chanting Hare Krishna, associating with devotees. That's the essence of the morning program. It's all there. And then much of the rest of the day is of course the deity department, maintaining the temple, which itself is a very important preaching element. Having a place where people can come and it's all Krishna, and it's clean and geared toward hearing and chanting and serving. That's essential. That's why Prabhupada spent so much time founding the temples and tending devotees out to pioneer here and there. And at the same time, trying to bring people in, convince them, the few that are really receptive to the message. We had this nice boy last night. What was his name? Dylan. Yeah. Who came to class, and you met him in the lounge or on street? Yeah. Very nice kid. I mean, you can fill in the details. But he came to the class and was listening very attentively. I think he's reading books, So there's people out there. We were one of them at some point. Somebody gave us a book or a mantra or an invitation. And so that's an essential part of our practice and our developing our devotion to the Guru, Sadhu, and Krishna. And hearing the Bhagavatam is also part of it. So this is, this is chapter 26 now, I think. So it's interesting that he starts with the glories of bhakti, right? And it's sadhu sangashtika and so many things. To understand, well, okay, that's the context in which all this is being given. This is meant to strengthen your understanding, your faith, that this is really how things are coming about, and to be, determined to use this facility that we've been given, by this process, to transcend it. As Narada Muni says, does not a thing which is used therapeutically cure the very same thing? You drink too much sweet rice, you get indigestion. Okay, take some yogurt with black pepper or whatever it is. In other words, the milk product can cure a disease that's caused by the milk product. So sensual activities, can cure our attachment to sense gratification if those sensual activities are geared towards serving Krishna. And then we find ourselves happy anyway. Not through sense gratification, but through pleasing Krishna. It's coming from within. Krishna is giving us more and more bliss from within. So that's the vilas, the spiritual pleasure that can negate our attraction to sense gratification. So I'll stop there. Are there any comments or questions? We can entertain them now. Otherwise, I'll regale you with some poem. So if you want to avoid that, you better ask a question. Yeah. I don't think you use the evolution in the context of creation. Here, I think here's yesterday's verse. By interactions of the air and the sensations of touch, one receives different forms according to destiny. By evolution of such forms, there is fire, and the eye sees different forms and color. I can go back to the original transcript and see what Prabhu really said. There may be some problem with the editing. It sounds like an evolution of species, but I don't think he's talking about that. This is the translation to text 38. This was yesterday. By interaction of the air, the sensation of touch, one receives different forms according to destiny. By evolution of such forms, there is fire, and the eye sees different forms and color. I think it's just development. Yeah, I don't think it's. Yeah, there's nothing in here about. Rupam has of course means form, but when you're talking about fire and you're talking about the eye and seeing, it means seeing the forms, and he's really talking about how our form evolves. In other words, develops. Not, Darwinian evolution. Forget that. I think it's the word that's sending us off. It's our form that we have now with all of the senses and all of the sensations that we experience and the sense objects that are out there. That's what's developing from this consecutively. And I'll look up the original and see what Prabhupada had there. There may be something we can do with that. Because it does, I can see how, you're talking about getting different forms according to destiny, and then you talk about evolution. Oh, that sounds like we're evolving, But that's not what's going on. It's not that the species are evolving here. There's nothing about that. Anything else? Yes, Prabhu.
There's a verse in the Bhagavatam somewhere in this part that says everything that's around originated in the sound vibration home.
Yes, that's in the 11th canto. I don't think it's here in the third canto. I recall it. Maybe I don't think so. I think it's definitely in the 11th canto. I know that for sure. And it's not just Om. Om is original, but it's by the vibration in general that everything is manifest, and that is the first.